Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to both our individual and corporate members of the Cardiff Business Club. And I'd also like to extend a big welcome to anyone who's new to the club and maybe taking advantage of our ongoing online meeting format. Just as a reminder, although still obviously unable to hold our physical events, we have been club should still perform its unique role of drawing together a cross-section of Cardiff and wider Welsh life to listen to prominent speakers talk about their respective industries and the issues of the day if they choose to go there. As I've said previously, we've received considerable support over recent months and in particular from our season sponsors, Cardiff Metropolitan University and Odgers, and their support is greatly appreciated, particularly through these challenging times. The format this evening will follow the same as previous online events. I will shortly introduce our speaker, and after his address, we will undertake a question and answer session. As per the joining instructions, please would you send your questions as concisely as possible, please, directly to me by clicking into the chat box at the bottom of your screens, and then I will ask as many as I can in the time that we have available. Given that we are using slides this evening, we would recommend that you use the speaker view, which you can find at the top right of your screen during the presentation. So on to the introduction of our speaker. Rob Lindley is a graduate of the University of Nottingham, where he achieved a degree in chemistry and industrial economics, and then he went on to graduate from the University of Stanford School of Business. Rob's automotive career began with the Ford Motor Company in 1989, progressing to become managing director of Mazda Motors in the UK, and then sales and marketing director globally for Mclaren Automotive. He's also held the position of vice president and managing director of Harley-Davidson for Europe, Middle East and Africa, so some very nice brands there, before he joined, of course, Mitsubishi Motors as the in the UK as managing director in April 2018. Mitsubishi's first vehicles were imported into the UK in 1974, can you believe, and have grown into one of the most highly respected motor brands in the UK. However, last year, the company announced its decision not to bring any new models into the UK and indeed Europe, effectively withdrawing from these markets. The company is based in Cirencester and has said that it would attempt to accelerate its plans to bring other emerging brands into the UK to replace the space left by Mitsubishi. And I'm sure that's something that Rob will no doubt touch upon, along with his wealth of experience within the automotive sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Rob Lindley.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, for that introduction. I didn't know you were so well informed, but it's very nice to get a bit of a build up there. So I'm going to share some slides this evening. So hopefully this piece of technology will work and you'll be able to see my presentation shortly. So let's give that a go and we'll optimize that full screen. And hopefully you can still see me and still see the presentation. So, good evening, everybody. It's very nice to speak with you this evening, although I'm very, very disappointed not to be sharing a fine Welsh dinner with you. My loss, definitely that one. So as Scott mentioned, my name's Rob Lindley, and for the last 3 years, I've been the managing director for Mitsubishi Motors, okay, which is a distributor called the Colt Car Company. Now, as Scott mentioned, he's done quite a bit of the build up already. During my career in automotive, I've been very lucky to work for some great brands. I sort of learned my trade at Ford Motor Company, and I worked there from 89 to 2001. And then I had 7 terrific years with Mazda, and I know there's somebody, at least one person on the call who worked with me at Mazda. Gemma McLean has already sent me a chat message to say hi to you, Gemma. I also then had a brief but very exciting detour into the world of luxury sports cars with Mclaren Automotive. And then I had 7 terrific years as managing director for EMEA for Harley-Davidson. And as Scott said, in April 2018, I swapped 2 wheels for 4 and joined Mitsubishi Motors as MD for the UK business where I am today. So as I was thinking about what to talk to you about this evening, I thought about what was the common theme between all of these assignments in my career that might be interesting to talk about and for us to have a chat about. And I came to the conclusion that one thing that every one of these roles involved was a very significant transition, a transition that was necessary to manage through or latterly for me, as I was lucky enough to attain leadership roles to lead the business through. So let me talk about some of these transitions in turn, and we can use that as a framework for a bit of a conversation in Q&A. So when I joined Ford back in May the 1st, 1989, as a zone manager for after sales, after my initial 12-week training program, I was assigned to look after 15 main dealers and 22 smaller retail dealers in the West Midlands area. And I was given to drive a Sierra 2-litre injection GLS. I was given a Pager, remember those, and an Atlas. Actually, I wasn't given the Atlas, I bought the Atlas. But that was my navigation tool at the time to visit my dealers. Now, at that time, I'm sure many of you remember, Ford was in a dominant position in the UK car market. They enjoyed between 25 and 30% market share. The Fiesta, the Escort and Sierra were the number 1, 2 and 3 best-selling cars in the UK. And of course, back then, Ford assembled cars in Dagenham, in Halewood, and also assembled the Transit in Southampton. And there was a Ford dealer in just about every town. Today, whilst Ford is still the market leader, their market share is down to around about 13%, and they no longer assemble any vehicles in the UK. And of course, as you know only too well, on September the 25th last year, they closed the engine plant in Bridgend after some 40 years. So that's certainly a transition of sorts, not one I guess most companies would want. But question I wanted to ask ourselves is, was that inevitable? And to some extent, I would argue, yes, it was. The main impact came from the growth of competition. So firstly, with European brands like Renault, Peugeot, penetrating the car market in the UK, and particularly the corporate market, where at that time, Ford and Vauxhall had been dominant. Then came the growth of the Japanese brands, then came the Koreans, and ultimately Ford was caught in that classic mid-market squeeze with cheaper brands down below eating into their core customer base, and the premium German brands beating them on desirability. To be honest, pretty much the same thing happened with every perceived national champion car brand in every market in Europe at around about the same sort of time. But my personal view is that there were 3 areas where Ford made mistakes and perhaps accelerated their decline. I'd like to talk a little bit about those. So firstly, I think that Ford did lose their way somewhat with their product lineup. When I first started with Ford, they used to offer very natural step transitions for people who could work their way up the brand as they became more affluent. Used to have very natural price walks, and you knew that for a few extra pounds a month, you could get the GLX or the Gear or the next model above. But as Ford changed their lineup and removed certain models and derivatives, like the Gear, for example, they made it less obvious to customers how they could progress up the brand. Secondly, Ford, at that time, in particular senior Ford leadership, it got distracted by making huge investments in buying Jaguar Land Rover. They bought Volvo, Aston Martin, and even at one point, Ford actually bought QuickFit. You may remember that. Well, they ended up ultimately divesting out of all of these investments, but only after those had soaked up a huge amount of cash that could have gone into building up the Ford brand. And thirdly, and this is my personal view again, is that Ford were a little bit too quick to give up on their retail representation in smaller towns. They had a theory at the time that they needed big statement dealers to represent the brand, and to make that business model work, those dealers needed bigger areas of opportunity, bigger market areas, and therefore they encouraged some of the smaller retail dealers to exit and to take on other brands. What they missed, in my opinion, was that those retail dealers enjoyed huge loyalty from their local customer base. And when they swapped brands to Peugeot or Fiat or Hyundai, the customers simply went with them. And don't get me wrong here, I had a fantastic time at Ford, and it's still a brilliant company today. In many ways, it's actually amazing that they're still market leader in the UK after all these years. Ford did many great things, like, for example, the introduction of PCP finance in the UK with the options program. But Ford was also a fantastic training school for the industry. If you look around the car industry today, you'll see that many of the MDs of different car companies began their careers at Ford, as I did. But for me, it's a little bit sad to see the decline of a brand that once everyone wanted to work for. So in July 2001, I joined Mazda Motors UK, initially as marketing director, as part of a team taking over that business from the previous independent distributor. I enjoyed 7 great years at Mazda, where we transitioned the brand from really what was an also-ran to a really successful niche player. When we took over at the end of July 2001, Mazda had sold just around 7,000 cars in the UK, and vans in the UK that year, and the market share was down to something like about 0.4%. I do actually remember a former colleague from Ford taking the out of me and telling me that Mazda's share of the car market was less than that of the Ford Cougar. Who indeed remembers the Ford Cougar? So apart from the MX-5, back in 2001, Mazda had what was a range of rather tired, undifferentiated products with nameplates that you'd be well forgiven for not remembering, like the Demio, the Premacy, the 626 and the B2500 pickup truck. However, we were very lucky. Mazda had in the pipeline some really great new products, including the Mazda 6, the RX-8, the Mazda 3, the next generation MX-5 and the Mazda 2. And we rode that wave of new product investment while ourselves investing in the brand through the Zoom Zoom campaign and also investing in growth of the dealer network. And this established in my mind a core principle for growth in the car industry that I've followed ever since. And that is that in order to successfully grow an automotive business, a car business, you really need 3 things, and you have to have all 3. And those 3 things are great product that has to have some element of differentiation, point of difference that you can lean into. You have to have investment in the brand. To grow a business, and particularly to grow the market share faster than competition, you have to over-invest in marketing, at least initially, while you're growing that share. And the third thing is you have to have a great network. You need network coverage, but you also need a network that's got good processes, good quality, good customer experience, and your dealers also have to be profitable. And that very much was the story of our transition in Mazda from 2001 to 2008. We grew the business to over 50,000 vehicle sales and to over 2% market share for the UK car market. And we were named Manufacturer of the Year by What Car, I think it was in 2006. And actually at the same time, we made a lot of money for the parent company in Japan as well. So it was a really terrific time. Now, the story of Mazda since the global financial crisis of 2008-9 is a little bit more complicated, but sadly we haven't got time for that tonight. So I'm going to move on to the next one. And that is Mclaren Automotive. We haven't really got time for the full story of this one either, but I'm going to give you a little potted history. So I joined Mclaren in September 2008 after being recruited as the global commercial director. And my brief was to launch the first genuine McLaren road car, sports car, which I knew then as Project P11, but which ultimately became a car called the MP412C. And there was also going to be a whole series of luxury sports cars to follow. It was a fantastic opportunity to take this brand, known for its iconic Formula One success, and to turn it into a major player in the luxury sports car market and business to rival Ferrari. This was a transition actually that McLaren has now largely achieved, although I'll tell you there were some big bumps in the road along the way. I got a chance to work there at the amazing McLaren Technology Centre down in Woking, which is a place I would encourage you all to visit if you ever get a chance. It's like being on a James Bond film set. There are some tremendous stories from my time at McLaren, which I would love to share, but A, we haven't really got time, and B, I might get sued, so probably best if I don't. But after less than a year working with McLaren, I then went to join Harley Davidson. So surely I already had the dream job. Why on earth would I want to do that? Well, there were a couple of reasons, really. One was personal. We were in the middle of the global financial crisis, if you can remember that one. And the impact of that on our family at the time was that we were unable to sell our family home. And I was working and living away from home completely, with no end to that in sight, and a young family. And then also, secondly, between us all, won't go any further, I'm sure, I also felt that the expectations of the shareholders and the investors in the Mclaren business, especially in the early years, were somewhat unrealistic, especially given the levels of cash they were willing, or in fact not willing, to invest in the growth of the brand. So I kind of felt that as the commercial director, I might be the one to end up taking the rap for that. So I felt it was maybe an opportunity like Harley Davidson, which was far too, maybe an offer I simply couldn't refuse. It was too good to turn down. And on the point about the overambitious plans, I did turn out to be right on that one. But that's, again, perhaps a story for another day or for Q&A. So I then had the opportunity to join Harley Davidson in 2009. So it was a fantastic opportunity to run the Europe, Middle East and Africa business. And I sort of fell in love with the brand. I fell in love with the company, and it really was something I just couldn't say no to. However, even a global icon like Harley Davidson was not immune to the global financial crisis that was going on at that time. Just before I joined Harley, the stock price dropped to around about $14 a share. And Harley actually had to go out at that time and borrow $600 million from Warren Buffett and other investors at an excruciating 15% annual interest, simply to be able to keep the factories open and to keep the finance company liquid. But at that time, a very strong and single-minded new CEO called Keith Wandell came on board, and he turned the business around pretty quickly, actually, by making some very tough but some necessary decisions. And then Harley embarked upon a new strategy of global growth, focusing on opening up new markets and growing the customer base beyond the traditional US baby boomers, who were, to be honest, getting a bit old by then. My dog's just come to join me. That's what you get on a Zoom meeting, isn't it? Harley is a marketeer's brand, a dream as a brand. It's so obviously differentiated from every other motorcycle out there. It's a globally recognizable brand and trademark that evokes such strong feelings among its customers, where the loyalty is beyond belief, as you can see here with this chap who decided to tattoo the logo on the back of his neck. When we opened up a new Harley Davidson dealership in Manchester or Jordan or Lebanon or even Moscow or Saudi Arabia, we didn't have to spend a lot of time convincing people about what the brand stood for or what you were going to be getting with a Harley Davidson. Harley's brand statement is we fulfill dreams of personal freedom. And there are also many, many great iconic stories around the brand, a brand that was founded back in 1903 by three brothers and their friend, their best friend. The opportunities for marketing the brand were endless. So through this transition with Harley, the global growth, we opened approximately 15 dealers per year in my region, in EMEA. And while I was there, and at the point I left Harley Davidson at the start of 2017, the share price, which remember had been as low as $14, at that point had grown up to $60 a share. So it was definitely a really enjoyable time and a successful transition. And I had some amazing experiences riding Harleys around the world. And even though I don't still own one today, I do still have a bit of a residual love affair with the brand. Now, again, the stories of what's happened to Harley Davidson since 2017 with Trump and trade wars and their latest transition, including launching an electric motorcycle called the Livewire, well, that's probably another story for another day. Which brings me neatly on to Mitsubishi Motors. So I was asked in early 2018 to run the UK business for Mitsubishi Motors, which is operated by a distributor, the Colt Car Company, based in Cirencester. Mitsubishi Motors was at that time embarking on its own aggressive growth plan with a focus on SUVs, PHEVs, like the one you can see here, and future investment in EV products, all under the banner of the theme, Drive Your Ambition. It felt to me a little bit like the start of the journey that we had at Mazda, and things were very exciting. We laid out a plan, we laid out a vision for that growth over the next 5 years, and we made some great progress. In fact, in 2018, Mitsubishi was the fastest growing brand in the UK, and we enjoyed a very solid, respectable, positive result in our 18 to 19 financial year. But then, of course, we all know what happened next. COVID-19 came along, and COVID-19 was a huge shock to our business, as it was to every business, and also a huge shock to the Mitsubishi Motors business worldwide. As a result of the impact of COVID and following a change of leadership in Japan, Mitsubishi Motors revisited their strategy, and they made an announcement back in July 2020 that what they needed to do was to consolidate and to refocus their business on core markets and core products. So as a result, they made a decision that Scott mentioned earlier, that they would not be bringing in any new future models into the European market. Now, the issue and the challenge with the European market is that it has the toughest and most expensive to meet regulatory standards in the world, and also the highest operating costs of any major market in the world for the car industry. Europe also has a regulation called CAFE, Clean Air for Europe, CAFE, which requires all manufacturers to significantly reduce their CO2 emissions of the cars that they sell on a year-by-year basis, or they'll face huge fines, which would add up to billions of euros. Mitsubishi Motors then took a hard look at its business and decided that it had to make what was effectively an existential decision, and that decision was to withdraw from the European market over a period of time from what was seen to be an unprofitable market in Europe. So the transition I found myself leading from July 2020 onwards was leading a transition to a very different type of business. We have existing new car stocks to sell, and we can still bring in some new models this year, but by the end of the year, we expect to have sold out of pretty much all of our remaining new vehicle stocks. And then we'll be transitioning our business to a parts and service only business, looking after our existing customers. Now, this news, to be honest, is extremely tough on our team at Cirencester, many of whom have been working on building the Mitsubishi brand here in the UK for 25 or even 30 plus years. And it's also extremely tough for some of our dealer partners as well, many of our dealer partners. And sadly, this transition, of course, does mean that we're going through a significant reorganization with a large number of redundancies in our business, which of course the team are aware of. I wouldn't be sharing that with you if the team didn't know about that. But our intention is to make a success of it and to become a great after-sales business and to support our customers for many years to come. I think the industry faces some challenges. I don't think that Mitsubishi will be the last car company that looks closely at their European business and whether they can afford to continue to make new product investments here. You can already see some evidence of that with some unusual mergers of brands and decisions to make joint investments in products from unusual bedfellows. Brexit also creates some further challenges here in the UK, even though we've had a sort of a trade deal. You've probably heard about the impact of something called rules of origin regulations, which are going to make it tough for car companies here if they don't also build the powertrain, and in particular in future, the batteries here within the UK market. In addition, those CAFE regulations that I mentioned earlier also create a further impact and complexity. The UK's launching its own version of the CAFE rules with its own version of the CAFE fines. But because the UK registrations will no longer count towards the European targets, I suspect that many manufacturers, if they find themselves short of supply of EVs or PHEVs that will bring down their CO2 average, what they may decide is that it's better for them to supply those vehicles into the European markets to obviate a much bigger risk of fines across the whole of the EU 27. So I think that's one of the challenges that's still to come for this industry. And I think, knowing that there's a massive supply chain base in Wales for the automotive industry. It's a key one to face up to. So in conclusion, what have I learned from my 31 years in the automotive industry? Well, firstly, it's still a great industry to work in. Perhaps it doesn't have quite the same attractiveness to graduates and young people as when I joined 1,000+ people being interviewed to join Ford back in 1989, but it's still a lot more fun than selling fridges. Apologies to anyone on this call that sells fridges, by the way, my mistake. Secondly, it is a cliche, but change in this industry is a constant. You heard that every single one of these experiences that I was part of required a huge transition. And then with increasing regulation and environmental challenges in front of us, there is significant more changes to come. So we better be ready for it. Thirdly, and this is my opinion, but this industry is still about the same three things that I spoke about: great and differentiated product, brand investment, and a great network. And you still need all three. And fourthly, and this is more of a general business point, good and regular communication is key. This has always been true, but I think that since the pandemic, with all the challenges that's brought, that's become even more apparent to us. In our business at Colt Car Company right now, even though we're largely all working from home, we try to have regular catch-ups, and I record a weekly State of the Nation video that we encourage all the members of the team to watch on a Friday. Sometimes, I'll be honest, it's tough to do that because there isn't necessarily a massive amount of positive news to share. But the simple act of trying to keep in touch is really important for people who may feel quite disconnected from their colleagues and from the business at times right now. And finally, do make sure that you do something that you enjoy, that you can be passionate about, and try to have a bit of fun. It is a tremendous cliche, but life is very short, folks. And with that, I thank you all very much for listening to me prattle on, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand back over to Scott. Thank you.
Rob, thanks very much indeed for that. Well, I've already got quite a lot of questions coming through, but as Rob said, please, I'm sure that talk will have stimulated some questions, both in terms of career, but also for those that are interested in the automotive industry. So without further ado, I will get straight into the questions. And I think the first one was from Gordon Brown, there's a couple of questions that are kind of connected here, so we'll see how you go, Rob, as to how we meld them together. But he says that he was out in Japan and saw Mitsubishi were pushing the hydrogen cars and all the kit around that. So interested to know how they are sort of looking at hydrogen power in the future. And then there's a sort of second part to that, and that's a sort of potential linkage to homes and fuel cells. The UK government regs, apparently there's changes coming up where it could make it quite a strong link between car tech and housing.
Yeah, so hydrogen's not really a big part of Mitsubishi's future technology plan. Mitsubishi, as far as I'm aware and what I've seen, their big focus has been on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs, and moving towards EVs. I know that Mazda certainly experimented with hydrogen versions of the rotary engine, and there are also other models, other car companies that are looking at hydrogen as a potential future power source. But it's still a few years behind pure electric as the battery-powered electric as the main route that car companies are going to achieve their environmental targets. It's one that I hope does come to the fore in the future, because it's a neat technology, and obviously the only emissions you get out of a hydrogen-powered engine is water, which is pretty fantastic. In terms of fuel cells powering homes, that's probably something more for Mitsubishi Electric, I guess, rather than Mitsubishi Motors, that they would look at. Mitsubishi Motors did look at something called the Dendo Drive House, which was a project that they studied. And this was used a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle and a wall-mounted battery as an alternative power source for your home. And the idea was that if you had a power outage, and in Japan there's a lot of earthquakes, so you do get unusual power outages, that you could potentially tap into the battery power in your PHEV through a two-way transformer system in order to continue to provide power emergency supplies in your home, if there was a power failure. So I know there was a bit of an experiment with that, although it hasn't reached any sort of mass market usage yet.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. So Nigel Payne's question sort of follows on from that. He was asking about hydrogen, whether that would be used for things like taxis, which obviously you sort of touched on. But he's also asking about your views on the rollout of EV electric cars, into maybe Green Park transport hubs, and how that then could support UK and indeed Welsh government, policy in terms of increasing the use of that, and JLR obviously announcement in terms of moving to electric cars actually relatively quickly. So kind of your whole piece then on electric.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the role of electric is going to be vitally important in the industry going forward. You've seen the government's announcement now that it wants to eliminate internal combustion engines by 2030 in terms of new vehicle sales. That's encouraging every manufacturer to look at their approach, and EV is the predominant approach that everyone's taking to get there, and I think that will only accelerate. Everyone wants to be Tesla right now as well. Tesla's market capitalization, I think I read that it's more than the next 9 car companies added together in terms of its market value. Now, you may argue that's an insane bubble, or something that's a fantastic result from that business, but certainly as a company and a brand that have stolen a march in terms of electric vehicle supply, Tesla's really encouraged everyone to up their game in that space. There's no question about it. I'm pretty sure that local government, local authorities will be leading the way with their purchases of ultra low emission vehicles and EVs. It's certainly something. When we've been supplying PHEV, Outlander PHEV passenger car, but also Outlander PHEV commercial to local authorities ourselves, because it's a great vehicle that fulfills a lot of capabilities as both an ultra low emission and a really good tool.
Right, we're now moving on to Ben Montgomery, who's sort of got a multifaceted question. It's around, do you think the point you made about European and UK emissions, do you think those sort of regulations are potentially killing off the car? And are manufacturers expected to effectively electrify or die? And are there any manufacturers out there who you think will end up as the blockbusters of the car market? And I think you might have mentioned one just then.
Yeah, electrify or die. Certainly in Europe, that's very much the case. I mean, Europe leads these environmental regulations. It's a phase ahead of just about every market in that respect. You're also seeing a massive movement in China actually towards electrified vehicles, with brands like NIO developing in that space very quickly. I don't know if you'll see. I think what you'll see is these continued mergers going on. You've already seen evidence of it. You saw PSA, Peugeot, Citroën merging with General Motors, Vauxhall in the UK, but GM across Europe, and then you saw them subsequently merging with Fiat, or that's underway at the moment. And that's just because the physical, you're seeing that type of behaviour because the investments required to make this transition to build all new platforms that are capable of carrying this battery technology are huge. It's billions of euros and dollars. So manufacturers doing that on their own is very, very difficult. And again, that's why you also see decisions like the one we've been party to, or it's impacting upon our business of Mitsubishi Motors deciding to focus on other markets other than Europe, because Europe has these particularly high burdens of entry and relatively low margins. So it's a more expensive. So Mitsubishi Mitsubishi are very, very strong in the ASEAN markets around the Pacific Rim, in places like Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and they can work in those markets and be much more profitable by focusing on product development for that area without having to go through the same level of regulatory burden that you see to compete in Europe. So you're going to see, I think you'll see more of that. I'm not sure if there's going to be a blockbuster as such. I think that the interesting thing with car companies is the brand never dies. You always see the brand kind of gets reinvented as something else along the way, and bought by somebody else and re-emerges again.
Okay, Paul Thorburns asking, or notes that the closure of the Bridgend engine plant was, quite a sobering announcement, given the significant representation of automotive in first, second, and third tier manufacturers in Wales. So, if you were a leading member of Welsh government, where would you be guiding our investment teams, and where would you want to focus skills and training and technology development? As clearly some of the traditional areas are now fading away.
Have we got any leading members of Welsh Government on the call? Just out of interest, better place to answer that than me.
I'm not sure we have, but if anyone has,
I don't know. I'm not sure how I would. I think the obvious one is probably battery technology and the development and the building of that. As I mentioned, the rules of origin regulations have a specific impact in that it's no longer going to be possible for an OEM or a manufacturer to build cars in the UK and export them into Europe unless they have a minimum amount of content that is also built in the EU. So, because the battery is such an expensive part of the vehicle component cost, if you were to bring your batteries in from China or other Asian markets and then try to export vehicles assembled in the UK into EU, you'd face significant tariff penalties. So it seems obvious to me that if you were the Welsh Government, who always had a very strong history of driving inward investment, the right thing to do would be to try and seek out that battery gigafactory. But probably every town and city in the UK is looking to be the one to build that battery gigafactory right now, truth be told.
Well, that's another slant on electric. Ryan Parsons is asking that one of his clients, who's in air filter manufacturing, has sort of relayed to him that the belief that if the UK effectively moved away from petrol diesel into electric, then actually the big question is, could the UK actually cope with the electricity demand required to drive that? So interested in your view on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I'm probably not the one that knows the answer to that. I think that there are issues. We know already that the UK is committed to moving out of coal-fired power. We know that the number of the nuclear power stations are being wound down over the next few years without much investment. I think you've only got Sizewell being invested in as a big growth. So the question is whether renewable technologies, wave power, wind power, whether they can take up the slack and capacitize for the incremental demand from electric vehicles. I think there's also a challenge with local grid infrastructure as well. If you've got a situation where you've got every house in a street is powering an electric vehicle, have you got the local grid capability to manage that? And I think that's not obvious that's the case yet. So there's got to be quite a lot of investment if this is the route that everyone's going to go down. That still needs to happen. Needs some very joined up thinking, but it's going to be relatively slowish pace to get there. The intention is that from 2030 onwards, you won't be able to sell a new internal combustion engine vehicle. At that point, the vehicle park is still likely to be something like about 80% of the vehicle park will still be internal combustion engine vehicles at that point, because there's such a long lead time associated with it, and the growth ramp up has been, up until now at least anyway, fairly modest. You're still looking at less than 10% of cars sold in the UK pure EVs at the moment.
The next one might suggest that David Ainsworth is a automotive enthusiast, but a two-parter here. What is the most exciting car or bike that you've been given the opportunity to experience as part of your role? And then do you think that would have gotten the same rush of excitement if the vehicle had been electric?
Yeah, it's a good question. A few different things come to mind. I mean, I had an opportunity to be driving on the prototype of the Mclaren MP412C. Fairly early on in the development of that vehicle. That was pretty exciting, not least because it was very much a prototype. Motorcycle wise, I also I love riding Harleys, and Harleys are a very different experience to sports bikes. As anyone who's ever ridden one would know, in general they're very much about cruising, and cruising with friends and colleagues is the way you tend to go. But I did also have the opportunity to ride on the prototype of the Harley Davidson Livewire, which is the electric motorcycle they've not long ago introduced. And I rode it. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Millbrook testing ground. There's something called the Alpine circuit there, which is as it sounds, a very hilly up and down, steep, sharp bends circuit. And I got a chance to ride the Livewire electric motorcycle around that, and that was pretty cool, I have to say. Really good fun. And it certainly showed me that there's a lot of potential in electric motorcycles, because it's people that have ridden motorbikes, is you've got a lot of things going on. You've got clutch and gears and different places to a car, and it's very active. Whereas with an electric motorcycle, it's just twist and go, and it's really easy, and very natural as well. So it's that was good fun. I really enjoyed that.
Next one's from Samantha Miles. Again, it's a two-parter. Really, just kind of what do you think Ford are doing, even though they've lost market share, but they're still, at the top of the market share list? Is it more to do with kind of those older initiatives, or is it something that you think they're adapting and coming out with newer initiatives that are keeping them up there? Sorry, the second part then is about insurance, and how much do you think that is a factor in buying decisions for vehicles, and do you see that changing over time?
So I think Ford has done a remarkable job, actually. I mean, I know I critiqued them in terms of the hastening their decline in the presentation, and I do think they did. But I think to still be market leader in the UK over all these years is a testament to their marketing capability, and they are a marketing machine, no question about that. Things they have in their favour, they're still viewed even today as a little bit of a national champion. People still, even though they stopped building cars here years ago, you've still got a lot of inherent belief about Ford as a kind of a British UK entity, even though it's an American company. They also have a very large installed customer base, and a dealer network, which is still the largest and most complete dealer network out there. So those things give them natural advantages, but they market themselves very strongly. I mentioned about options, and they use trade cycle management products like PCP, finance, etc., very effectively to keep renewing customers time and time again, and to keep you on that drip of a new car purchase. So there's a lot of things that they do right. I'm sorry, what was the second part? I've got to
insurance. Does it agree to insurance impact on purchasing decisions?
I don't think it may impact some brand decisions all that much at all, if truth be told. You look at the big variabilities that drive insurance cost, and not so much the car you drive anymore, and certainly not with new cars. It's much more about your age, your driving record, and where you live. Those are the things that have the biggest factors on your insurance premium. So when it comes to the insurance part of it, they look at two factors. They look at the body repair cost, particularly, and whether the vehicle crashes well, and is expensive to repair. And they tend to look at the ease of break-in. That's what insurers are interested in. Well, on both of those aspects, you'll find that the overwhelming majority of new cars being built today are really outstanding on those areas. So they're not. It's not driving insurance cost premiums that much, I don't think.
So Melanie Hamer's question is around your kind of position as a leader. So what have been the most enjoyable aspects of being a leader, and what have been your least enjoyable? As a PS, she's asking, what dog do you have?
I'll do the last one first. So he's gone now, but Archie the golden retriever just popped in to say hello, but he's wandered back into the other room. So he's golden retriever. As a leader, for me, unquestionably, the best aspects have been seeing the careers develop of certain people that I've had some involvement with along the way. So I'm not taking any credit for their achievements, but certain people that I've worked with, that you just see that they've had fantastic careers in themselves, and developed and grown, and really gone on to enjoy their time, and people that I've worked with when they were maybe in the early stages of their career. That's probably the most rewarding aspect of leadership, when you see that play out. Definitely most challenging is when you have to face decisions like we did in the past few months, that we need to make a significant reorganisation and make a large proportion of our workforce redundant, and that is the most tough. Those in both the constant group consultation meetings, where you have to present that information to people, and then the individual one-on-one discussions are the toughest and worst days that you have to go through. as a leader, in my view. Right.
Yeah, I understand that. Ian Price is asking, what's your view on the car sharing sort of leasing type market model? And do you think it has a future? It seems to be gaining some traction in London, and could it work in less or kind of less urban communities?
I think it's a difficult model. A lot of people have been trying to crack this for quite a long time, and you've got a couple of things playing against you with it. There's quite a bit of pride in ownership still, and that's something that doesn't go away easily in people. Then you have that's certainly one factor. Then you also have the pandemic factors. Now people are more sensitive about sharing things, whether it's public transport or sharing a car with other road users, other users, and that's created some levels of uncertainty. And then it's also about how you manage the whole issue about responsibility for damage, cleanliness, etc. All those changeovers. It's just proved to be quite a tough model. I think it's probably something that does work well in London, because in London absolute levels of car ownership are lower, so you need to have access to vehicles just simply to be able to get out of town on the weekends, etc. For people that want to do that. But it's a more difficult model elsewhere, and I haven't yet seen many players make a significant inroads into it. You see other things like Uber and other apps that allow, perhaps been successful in a slightly different way in that format.
Okay, I'll just do a couple more, since we're conscious of time's moving on. Ken Goodchilds, back to electric. Do you see any manufacturers in the UK looking to support the need for to make batteries in the UK and to support the 2030 target?
I'm not sure if there's anyone actively made any commitments to build batteries in the UK yet. Since the Brexit announcement or trade deal, the only manufacturer that's come out and really made a strong statement about manufacturing was Nissan. So they came forward and said that they were very much committed, and Brexit really cleared the path to the Sunderland plant for the future. I don't know if they subsequently committed themselves to building batteries here. Obviously, they will be building battery-powered vehicles in that plant. Jaguar Land Rover, as we heard the other day, they've made a commitment that they will go a fully electric Jaguar brand by, I think it's 2025. Land Rover a little bit later. Again, I'm not sure if they've made a commitment about how they will source those batteries or where they will build them at this point. If someone else on this meeting knows better, then please correct me. But I haven't heard that. But I think you will. I think you will see it. And I think what you're going to see is people are going to things will concentrate. You'll find that if manufacturers want to continue to assemble vehicles here, that they will most likely build battery factories here as well. But the question is, will the UK win out in that sense? We already know that Honda is leaving. As I mentioned, Ford no longer assembles vehicles here. What's Ford going to do with its engine plants? Its plant that it has in Dagenham that builds engines, the transmission plant that it has in Liverpool. Are they going to convert those to building batteries, or will they build the batteries closer to where they have the vehicle production? Not sure. It's a difficult one. I think the governments have to encourage both the assembly of vehicles and the building of batteries, and provide probably incentives to do that, to get car manufacturers to come here and to commit.
Okay, I'm just going to do two quick last ones, if that's okay. And the first one's really, as a couple of people asked a similar question, so it's around sort of automated driverless vehicles. So do you see a future in it, or connected to that, do you think the legal concept of who's responsible for it in the case of an accident is going to be a barrier to it growing? And then do you see that then becoming, as the technology advances, whether that will almost sort of be pushed back on the manufacturer in terms of the liability?
I 100% see a future in it. I think it's so logical and obvious. If you think about all of the transportation that's done, the road freight, transportation, the ability of an autonomous vehicle to fulfill multiple uses. So, for example, if I had an autonomous vehicle that could take me to the office when I'm allowed to go back to the office again, and then can go off and do something else and make better use of that vehicle while I'm not using it, that's such a massive efficiency gain. There has to be some opportunity in making that happen. The liability issues and the technology, I think they'll probably get sorted. We've already got plenty of running prototypes out there doing this type of thing. The liability issues is a big challenge. You know, you've got the question about the old question about if you have if an accident's inevitable, and on one hand the vehicle has to run into a mother and 2 children, on the other hand has to run into a group of 12 solicitors at a bus stop, which route will the autonomous vehicle choose? Solicitors, obviously, but no, I'm sure there's a few solicitors on the call, so I shouldn't say that. But that type of moral dilemma is what has to be addressed, and certainly the liability aspect of it is going to be an issue. But I'm pretty sure there will be some strong efforts to overcome that, because the potential efficiency gains and savings out of this are so worthwhile if it can be done.
Sure. And just to finish then, Gemma McLean, I think you know, is just asking, is the future of the motor industry as exciting as the past has been?
I don't know, I'm getting a bit old fella now, Gemma, so I'm not sure it's quite as exciting for me anymore. But I think it's probably changing even faster than it was. You know, when so Gemma and I, full disclosure, worked together at Mazda through that period, and it was a very exciting time for us growing that brand. But it was, you know, so many things that have changed since then. Electric vehicles, of course, the development of China as both a massive market and now a massive producer of global electric vehicles, autonomous driving, the environmental regulations getting tougher and tougher. You know, all of these things, just pace of change continues to accelerate and evolve. So I think if you're minded that way and you think the industry's the one for you, I think certainly the future will be every bit as exciting if you can keep up.
Listen, Rob, I think we ought to end there. It's been fantastic to have so many questions, which I think is a testament to, you know, how interesting your presentation and discussion has been. You know, certainly we've got a great understanding of how, you know, your career's evolved, but, you know, you very much said you were going to focus on transition, and I think we've got a real story of that, both in terms of how the industry's transitioned from where it was when you started, and of course all kind of twists and turns of the future around future technologies, whether that be electric, hydrogen, or indeed driverless cars, and also kind of the challenges maybe the UK and European markets as we move forward. As I say, the number of questions we've had has been a testament to how interesting your discussion has been. So,
you know, you want it to be a little bit thought-provoking, and hopefully that it works a little bit in that way. So I'm
absolutely.
I'm just so sorry I couldn't meet you all in person.
Well, that would be. I think we're all in that camp. I can't believe it's been pretty much a year since we've all been able to meet in one place, which is unbelievable. I'll just move now to sort of close and conclude the meeting. As I say, Rob, thanks again for addressing the club. It's been great. As you say, hopefully we can meet in person at some point. I'm sure you have all enjoyed this virtual meeting, and our next event will be held again online on Monday the 15th of March, again at 6 p.m, when we're absolutely delighted that Tony Radakin, who's the first Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff, will be addressing the club, and we are very grateful to the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association in Wales for their assistance in securing Tony as our guest. His operational services included the Iran-Iraq tanker war, security duties in the Falklands, NATO embargo operations in the Adriatic, countering smuggling in Hong Kong and the Caribbean, and 3 command tours in Iraq. So again, I think we're in for another really interesting discussion on a completely different topic to the one we've enjoyed this evening. And as always, further details for booking this and other future events are on the club's website. Thank you again to our season sponsors, Cardiff Metropolitan University and Odgers, And of course, we are always keen to speak to organisations who might like to sponsor an event like this. So please contact Paul Thorburn or Liz Brooks if you are interested. So just to conclude, thank you all again for joining us. We hope that you and your families continue to be safe and well. I guess you might join me in going off now to absorb what Boris has been announcing, and we'll reflect on that and look forward to seeing you again on the 15th of March. Thank you very much.